Before continuing, what you're about to hear is disturbing. This content is for educational and entertainment purposes only. What follows is based on public statements, archived interviews, and testimonies from people close to Axl Rose during the peak of Guns N' Roses, the band that dominated the rock world in the late 80 seconds and early 90 seconds. The day Axl Rose broke his silence, nobody saw it coming. It wasn't in a planned interview, it wasn't in an authorized documentary. It was in a live stream from his house in Malibu, unfiltered, without managers, without a script. Just him, a camera, and a half-finished bottle of whiskey. For almost 2 hours he spoke non-stop, and what he said left the rock world paralyzed. "I've carried this for over 30 years, he began. "And if I don't say it now, I'm going to take it to my grave. But I don't want to die with this inside anymore." Axl Rose leaned back on the black leather couch. He wore a worn cap, dark glasses, and a sleeveless t-shirt. He looked tired, but not defeated. There was something in his gaze, something that had been hidden for decades behind the stage fury, behind the scandals, behind the image of the uncontrollable rock star. He started talking about 1991, the year Guns N' Roses released the albums Use Your Illusion I and II. Double albums, massive tours, magazine covers, million-dollar contracts. The world was at their feet. "We were untouchable," he said. "We had total control, or so we thought." It was then when he received a call from a record label executive, someone Axl preferred not to name directly, but whose initials he dropped several times during the broadcast. They told him there was an exclusive meeting at a private mansion on the outskirts of Los Angeles. It wasn't a common party, it was a power meeting where covers, contracts, and careers were decided. "They told me that if I wanted to stay relevant, I had to go," Axl recalled. "That the people who really moved the industry were there, the ones who decided who rose and who disappeared." He arrived one October night, accompanied only by his driver. The mansion was hidden behind a hill, surrounded by trees and without signs. At the entrance, 2 men in black suits were waiting for him. They took his phone, asked him to sign a confidentiality agreement, and handed him a silver mask. "All guests must wear it," they told him. "It's part of the ritual." Axl entered, and what he saw immediately disconcerted him. There were legendary musicians, movie actors, Hollywood producers, all with masks, all in silence. The music was low, almost hypnotic. There were candles in every corner and a strange smell in the air, like incense mixed with something chemical. "I didn't feel welcome," Axl confessed. "I felt watched, as if I was being evaluated." A tall man, dressed in a black robe, approached him and extended his hand. "Welcome, Axl. It was about time you joined the family." Axl didn't recognize the voice immediately, but later found out who it was: a producer with decades of influence. Someone who had worked with iconic bands and had connections at all levels of the industry. They took him to an interior room. There was a long table, covered with a dark red tablecloth. Around it sat about 15 people, all with masks, all motionless. In the center of the table was something covered with a black cloth. The man in the robe spoke. "Tonight is about loyalty, about demonstrating that you're willing to cross lines to stay at the top, because greatness is not for the weak." Axl felt a knot in his stomach. "I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't leave. I felt that if I did, everything I had built would crumble." Then they uncovered what was in the center of the table. It was a human skull, or at least it seemed so. It was decorated with embedded stones and engraved symbols. "This represents sacrifice," the man said. "The sacrifice of the old to be reborn in the new. Whoever kisses this skull will be blessed with eternal success." One by one, the guests stood up and did it. Axl watched in horror as figures he admired, people he had listened to on the radio all his life, knelt and kissed that object without hesitation. When his turn came, he froze. "I couldn't do it," Axl said with a broken voice. "I stood up and said no, that I hadn't come for that my music didn't need rituals to be real." The silence in the room was crushing. The man in the robe approached slowly. "Are you sure, Axl? Because once you reject this, there's no going back." The doors close. Axl nodded. "I'm sure." He left that mansion that same night. He never spoke again with anyone who was there. And from that moment on, everything changed. The following weeks were strange. Axl noticed that his manager started acting different, more distant, more evasive. The interviews he had scheduled were canceled without explanation. The contracts that were almost signed remained up in the air. "Nobody told me anything directly," he explained, "but something had changed. It was as if I had been marked." One day, one of his guitarists, someone he trusted, confessed something to him in private. "Axl, there are rumors. They say you rejected something important, that you didn't follow the rules. And that has consequences." Axl asked what kind of consequences. The guitarist only said, "Your name doesn't sound the same in the offices anymore. Now you're a risk." That was the first time Axl understood that it wasn't just about music. It was about control, about loyalty to a system that operated in the shadows. They don't fire you. They don't publicly cancel you. They simply stop opening doors for you. They isolate you until you become irrelevant. During the following months, Axl began to notice patterns. Bands that used to respect him now avoided him. Producers who wanted to work with him suddenly had other projects. Even some of his own bandmates began to distance themselves. "I felt betrayed," he admitted. "But worse than that, I felt alone. Because I knew that if I spoke, nobody would believe me. And if someone believed me, they would also be marked." Axl revealed that he tried to move forward as if nothing had happened. He composed new songs, planned tours, gave interviews, but something inside him had broken. "I wasn't the same. The rage I used to use to create now consumed me. I became paranoid, explosive, and the world thought I had simply gone crazy." He started drinking more, fighting with everyone, canceling shows without apparent reason. The press said I was a diva, that I was unstable, but nobody asked why. Nobody wanted to know what had happened to me. One day, in the middle of a tour in Europe, Axl had a breakdown. He was in his dressing room, alone, looking at himself in the mirror. "I saw a stranger. I didn't recognize myself. And in that moment, I knew that if I continued like this, I was going to die not physically, but inside." He decided to withdraw. He didn't announce an official retirement. He simply stopped appearing. He stopped doing interviews, stopped getting on stages. He took refuge in his house, surrounded by few trusted people. "I needed to heal. I needed to understand what had happened to me and why it affected me so much." Years passed. Guns N' Roses continued to exist, but without the same energy. Axl came out from time to time, played some shows, but he was no longer the same. People thought I had lost the passion, but it wasn't that. I had lost my innocence. During that time, Axl began to investigate. He spoke with veteran musicians, with people who had been in the industry since the 60 seconds and 70 seconds. And they all told him the same thing, that what he had experienced wasn't an isolated case, that those meetings had existed for decades, that many of rock's legends had gone through the same thing. Some accepted and became legends. Others rejected and were erased from history. And a few, like me, remained in limbo, neither inside nor outside. Axl mentioned that he even had contact with the family of a deceased musician, someone who had spoken publicly about industry control before dying. They told me he tried to warn others, that he left recorded messages, lost interviews, but nobody took him seriously until it was too late. It was then that Axl decided that someday he would speak, that he wasn't going to die with that secret. But I was afraid of what could happen, afraid they would call me crazy, afraid nobody would believe me. And so he lived for years, silent, watching from afar as the industry kept functioning the same, seeing how new generations of artists fell into the same traps, seeing how the system remained intact until today. Axl explained that what motivated him to speak was seeing other artists begin to break the silence. "I saw young musicians talking about abusive contracts, manipulation, control, and I realized that if I didn't speak now, I was being complicit." He said that for years he carried the guilt of having stayed silent. "I thought about all those who came after me, about those who maybe went to those meetings because nobody warned them, and I wondered if I could have prevented that." If you've made it this far and want to keep discovering stories nobody else tells, subscribe to the channel. But he also clarified that he doesn't regret having rejected what they asked of him. "I could have had more success. I could have been bigger, but I would have lost my soul in the process. And I prefer to be a fallen rock star than a puppet at the top." Axl spoke about how that night at the mansion changed him forever. It didn't just destroy my career. It destroyed my trust in people, in the industry, in everything I believed was real. He revealed that for years he had nightmares, that he saw those silver masks in his dreams, that he heard the voice of the man in the robe telling him, "There's no going back." I would wake up sweating, feeling like I had made a mistake, but then I realized that the mistake would have been staying. He also spoke about how it affected his personal relationships. I couldn't trust anyone. Every time someone approached me, I thought they were part of the system, that they were watching me. I became a hermit. His closest friends told him to seek help, to go to therapy. And I did. But how do you explain to a therapist that you rejected a pact in a secret mansion, and that's why your career collapsed? It sounds like madness. Axl said what hurt him most was seeing how some of his own bandmates distanced themselves. Not because they hated me, but because they were afraid of being associated with me. Because they knew I was a problem now. One of them told him privately, "Axl, I can't be around you. It's not personal, but I have a family, I have contracts. I can't risk it." That broke me, he confessed, because I realized that the system was stronger than any friendship, than any loyalty. Axl also revealed that he tried to talk to journalists on several occasions. I told them what had happened. Some listened attentively, but in the end, none published anything. They told me they needed more proof, that it was too dangerous, that it could ruin their careers. That's when I understood it wasn't just me, it was everyone. Everyone was afraid. For years, Axl took refuge in music, but in a different way. I no longer composed for the masses. I composed for myself, to heal, to understand. He wrote dozens of songs that never saw the light. They were too personal, too raw. They talked about things the world wasn't ready to hear. One of those songs, he said, was called The Broken Pact. It talked exactly about that night, about the mask, the skull, the choice. But I never officially recorded it. I knew that if I did, it would be my end. Axl also mentioned that during those dark years, he thought about suicide more than once. Not because I wanted to die, but because I didn't know how to keep living with that weight. I felt trapped between two worlds, the one I left and the one I could never reach. But something always stopped him. I thought about the fans, about the people who wrote me letters saying my music had saved them. And I realized that if I gave up, I would be betraying them. Axl explained that over time, he learned to live with the pain. It didn't disappear, but I learned to carry it differently. I stopped seeing it as a curse and started seeing it as a test that I still had some humanity. He also started to completely distance himself from the industry. I stopped going to award shows, stopped seeking validation, because I realized that the validation I was looking for came from the same system that had destroyed me. And in that process, he found a kind of peace. It wasn't the life I imagined, but it was mine, and it was real. Axl said that for years he watched other artists go through the same thing he did. I saw young musicians arrive with all the energy in the world and in a few years be empty, and I knew exactly what had happened to them. Some contacted him privately. They asked me if what was rumored was true, if those meetings existed, and I told them the truth. But most didn't believe me. They thought it was paranoia from someone who was no longer at the top. That also hurt me, because I knew they were going to fall into the same trap and there was nothing I could do. Axl revealed that a few years ago, a young musician visited him. He told me he had been invited to a private meeting, that they had told him it was a unique opportunity. He asked me if he should go. Axl looked him in the eyes and told him, "If you go, you'll never be the same again." And not in a good way. The musician didn't go, and weeks later, his contract was canceled. He wrote to me saying I was right, that he had lost everything for not going. But he also thanked me, because at least he kept his soul. That conversation made me realize that speaking did help, even if it was to save just one person. Axl also spoke about how technology changed everything. Before it was easier to hide things, but now with social media, with leaks, with people speaking openly, the system started to crack. He said that in recent years, he saw how more and more artists began to talk about similar experiences. Not always in the same way, but with the same background. Control, manipulation, strange rituals. And I realized I was no longer alone. that the moment to speak had finally arrived. Axl explained that he decided to do it now because he feels it's his last opportunity. "I'm not young, I have nothing to lose, and if I don't say it now, I'll take it to my grave." He also said he does it for all those who couldn't speak, for those who died silent, for those who were destroyed and forgotten, for those who are still trapped. This testimony isn't just mine, it's for all of them. Axl took a long pause. He took a drink of whiskey and looked directly at the camera. Hollywood, music, entertainment, everything works with the same rule: obey or disappear. And I chose to disappear rather than obey. I could have been bigger, I could have been an untouchable legend, but I would have had to sell myself, and that price was too high. He said he doesn't expect everyone to believe him. "I know many will think I'm crazy, that I make things up, that I'm seeking attention, but I don't care, because I know what I saw, and I know what I lived. And if a single person who hears this decides not to enter that mansion, then it was worth it." Axl also spoke about the emotional price he paid for decades. "There are days I wonder what my life would have been like if I had said yes that night. If I had kissed that skull, if I had closed my eyes and simply obeyed like everyone else." He was silent for a moment. "I probably would have more money, more awards, more recognition. But every time I looked in the mirror, I would have to see someone who sold the only thing that really matters." Axl revealed that in those years of isolation, he also lost important relationships. Lifelong friendships vanished. People I thought would always be there disappeared when I needed them most. And I don't blame them. The industry has a way of making you choose between loyalty and survival. He recalled a particularly painful conversation with a close friend. He told me, "Axl, I can't keep defending you. People ask me why I keep talking to you, and I don't know what to answer anymore." I asked him what I had done wrong, and he said, "Nothing. That's the problem. You didn't do anything you were supposed to do." That phrase haunted him for years, because he was right. In that world, doing the right thing is considered a mistake, and doing nothing when they ask you is the worst crime of all. Axl also spoke about specific moments when he felt the weight of his decision. "There was an award ceremony where I had been nominated. I was sitting in the audience and I saw how all the other musicians greeted each other, laughed, hugged, and nobody approached me. It was as if I were invisible. At one point, one of the presenters made a joke about artists who mysteriously disappeared, and everyone laughed. I knew they were talking about me. Not directly, but the message was clear. This is what happens when you don't play the game." But what affected him most wasn't the industry's rejection, but the silence of those who knew the truth. There were people in that room who were with me that night, who saw the same thing I did, who felt just as uncomfortable. But when they left there, they chose to forget. They chose to pretend it never happened. And I was left alone with the memory. Axl described how paranoia took over his life. "I started seeing signs everywhere. Every time a project was canceled, I thought it was because of them. Every time someone stopped answering my calls, I assumed they had received instructions. And maybe I was right. Or maybe I became so obsessed that I saw it even where it wasn't. That's another way they destroy you. They don't just isolate you, they make you doubt your own perception of reality." He also revealed that he tried to return to the big leagues several times. "I thought that maybe if I waited long enough, if I behaved well, if I showed I was no longer a threat, they would let me back. So I accepted small projects, did minor collaborations, tried to rebuild bridges. But there was always an invisible ceiling. I could get to a certain point, but never beyond. It was as if they had put a ceiling on me that I couldn't break through no matter how much talent I had or how hard I worked." Axl confessed there were moments of weakness. "There were nights when I thought about calling that producer, telling him I was ready, that I had been young and naive, that now I understood how things worked and that I wanted a second chance." He stopped and shook his head. "But every time I picked up the phone, I remembered his eyes that night. The coldness, the certainty that he had me exactly where he wanted, and I hung up. Because I knew that if I went back, I would no longer be me. I would be a hollow version of myself, and I preferred to be nobody being myself than someone important being someone else." Axl spoke about how he found comfort in unexpected places. "I started hanging out with people outside the industry, People who didn't know who Axl Rose was or didn't care. And it was liberating. For the first time in years, I could have real conversations. I could laugh without feeling like every word was being analyzed. I discovered there's life beyond the stages, and that life can be just as meaningful, even if it doesn't come with applause. He also found refuge in art in other ways. I started painting, writing, not to publish or sell, just to express myself. And I realized that during all those years at the top, I had never really created for myself. It was always for the audience, for the critics, for the executives. Now I was finally creating freely, and it was addictive. Axl explained that he learned lessons he would never have learned if he had stayed at the top. I learned about humility, about gratitude, about what it really means to be successful. Because success isn't how many records you sell or how many stadiums you fill. It's being able to look at yourself in the mirror and recognize yourself. And for years in Hollywood, I didn't recognize myself. I was a construction, a character, a brand, but I wasn't me. He revealed that the decision to speak now wasn't impulsive. I thought about it for months. I spoke with my family, with my close friends, with a lawyer. They all told me it was dangerous, that there could be legal consequences, that I could ruin any chance of ever coming back. But I came to the conclusion that there was nothing left to lose, and that maybe, just maybe, my story could help someone else not make the same mistakes I did. Axl looked directly at the camera with renewed intensity. To all the young artists who are listening to this, when that invitation arrives, and believe me, it will arrive if you have enough talent, remember that not everything that glitters is gold. Some of those sparkles are chains. They're going to promise you the world. They're going to tell you it's just one night, that it's just a symbol, that everyone does it. And technically they're right, everyone does it. But that doesn't mean it's right. He paused. They're going to make you feel special for being invited, like you've been chosen, like you've finally reached the inner circle. But that circle is a trap, and once you enter, it's almost impossible to get out. Axl ended by saying something that resonated deeply. The industry doesn't take your voice away suddenly. It turns it off little by little. First, it takes away your platform, then your credibility, then your dignity. And when you have nothing left, they convince you that you never had anything. But I still have my voice, and today I use it. The broadcast ended. Axl turned off the camera without saying goodbye, without background music, without effects, just silence. In the following hours, the video went viral. Millions of views, thousands of comments. Some supported him, others attacked him, but nobody remained indifferent. Because Axl Rose, the man who was once the king of rock, had just done something more dangerous than any song, tell the truth. If you made it this far, leave your comment and subscribe for more stories like this. Night was falling over Beverly Hills when a worn-out taxi stopped in front of the Grand Regency, one of the city's most exclusive hotels. From the back seat emerged a tall man with long hair disheveled from the journey, dressed in ripped jeans, worn leather boots, and a red bandana tied around his forehead. His tattoos peeked out from under a faded denim jacket. To any passerby, he was just another rock musician in Los Angeles. What no one knew was that this man was Axl Rose, legendary vocalist of Guns N' Roses, and that this night would forever change the history of that place. Axl adjusted the strap of his travel bag as he walked toward the main entrance. The doorman, a middle-aged man in an impeccable uniform, looked him up and down with barely disguised disapproval. He didn't say a word, but his expression said it all. Axl had experienced those kinds of looks before, so many times that they no longer affected him, or so he believed. He pushed through the glass doors and entered the lobby. The interior was dazzling. Italian marble floors, crystal chandeliers hanging from the ceiling like suspended jewels, and the soft murmur of elegant conversations floating in the air, perfumed with floral essences. It was the type of place where every detail screamed money and exclusivity. He approached the reception desk with a relaxed stride. The receptionist, a woman in her 30s with hair pulled back in a perfect bun and a professional smile frozen on her face, saw him approaching. For an instant, her smile faltered. "Good evening," said Axl in a hoarse but friendly voice. "I need a room for tonight. My private flight had mechanical problems, and I need to rest before continuing early tomorrow." The receptionist, whose nameplate read Amanda, looked at him with a mixture of doubt and barely perceptible disdain. Her eyes scanned his outfit. The dirty boots, the worn jeans, the jacket that seemed to have survived decades of concerts. "I'm afraid we don't have availability tonight, sir," she responded in a curt tone, without even looking at the computer. Axl raised an eyebrow. The lobby was practically empty. He could hear the echo of his own boots on the marble. "Are you sure? The place seems quite quiet." "Completely full," Amanda insisted, crossing her arms. "Perhaps you could find something more suited to your budget downtown." Axl felt the sting of her words, but kept his composure. He had learned not to react impulsively. "I understand," he said simply, though something inside him ignited. Before he could turn around, the hotel doors opened again. A middle-aged couple entered, both dressed in designer clothes, dragging Louis Vuitton suitcases. The change in Amanda was instant and dramatic. Her face lit up, her posture straightened, and her smile became genuine. "Welcome to the Grand Regency. Do you have a reservation?" The man shook his head. "No, it was a last-minute decision." "No problem at all," Amanda sang out, typing quickly. "Let me see what we have available." "Perfect. We have an executive suite on the 12th floor with a city view. Does that work for you?" Axl observed the entire scene. He didn't say anything, didn't make any dramatic gesture. He simply watched as Amanda processed the couple's check-in in less than 3 minutes, smiling and offering spa services, restaurant, and private transportation. When the couple walked away toward the elevators, Axl cleared his throat softly. Amanda turned, and her smile disappeared as if someone had flipped a switch. "I thought you were completely full," said Axl calmly, without hostility in his voice. Amanda's eyes blinked. That room had just become available, a last-minute cancellation. "How convenient," Axl murmured. But he didn't continue arguing. He nodded slowly, turned around, and left the hotel with the same calm with which he had entered. Outside, the Beverly Hills night sparkled with neon lights and the constant flow of luxury traffic. Axl stood under the hotel awning, watching. He took out his phone and pretended to make a call, but his eyes never left the entrance doors. It wasn't long before his suspicions were confirmed. A young man with the appearance of a junior executive, wrinkled suit and loosened tie, entered the lobby. Axl saw him approach the counter. From outside, he couldn't hear the conversation, but he didn't need to. He saw Amanda smile, type briefly, and hand over a room key in a matter of seconds. No questions, no doubts, no excuses. Axl felt something solidify in his chest. It wasn't just anger, it was determination. He got into his taxi, which had waited patiently in the parking area. "Take me to an all-night cafe," he told the driver. "One where I can work quietly. If you want to know how this story of perfect revenge ends, keep watching the video because what's coming will surprise you." The taxi dropped him off at a small diner in West Hollywood, a place with formica tables, fluorescent lights, and the comforting aroma of freshly brewed coffee. Axl sat in a booth at the back, ordered a black coffee, and took out his laptop. For years, Axl had been more than just a musician. He had intelligently invested the fortunes generated by his band, building a diversified portfolio of real estate, recording studios, and other properties. He had a team of lawyers, accountants, and financial advisors working for him across multiple time zones. He searched for information about the Grand Regency. It turned out that the hotel was part of a regional chain that had been facing financial difficulties. Sale rumors had been circulating for months. Axl took his phone and dialed a number he knew by heart. "Richard, it's Axl. I need you to investigate something urgent." Richard Thompson was his main lawyer, a man known for closing deals that others considered impossible. "The Grand Regency in Beverly Hills. I want to know who owns it, how much it's worth, and if it's for sale. And I need it before dawn." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Axl, it's 11 o'clock at night. I know. That's why I pay you so well." Richard sighed, but Axl could hear the sound of keys on his computer. "Give me 2 hours." It didn't take 2 hours. It took 90 minutes. When Richard called back, he had complete information. The hotel was in a discreet sale, the price was high but negotiable, and there were 3 potential buyers in preliminary conversations. "I want to make an offer they can't refuse," said Axl. Are you sure about this? It's a lot of money for Seton. Completely sure. Do it, Richard. Over the next few hours, Axl's team worked at breakneck speed. Calls were made to banks, lawyers, accountants. Documents were drafted, reviewed, and signed electronically. Axl offered a price significantly above market value, but with the condition that the closing be immediate. For the sellers, harassed by debts and offers that had stalled for months, it was like receiving a lifeline in the middle of the ocean. At 6:47 inches the morning, as the first rays of sun painted the Los Angeles sky with golden and pink tones, Axl received the confirmation message. The Grand Regency Hotel was officially his. He closed his laptop, paid for his coffee, and left the diner. The morning air was fresh and clean. He felt strangely at peace. The sun was already high when Axl returned to the Grand Regency. This time, he arrived in a black luxury sedan, driven by his personal assistant Marcus. He wore exactly the same clothes as the night before. The same ripped jeans, the same boots, the same denim jacket. But now he carried a leather folder under his arm. He entered the lobby with the same calm as always. The morning staff was already at their posts. Amanda was still behind the counter, looking fresh despite the night shift she had apparently extended into the morning. When she saw him enter, her expression hardened. "Sir, we already told you last night that we don't have," she began to say. Axl placed the folder on the counter with a soft but firm tap that resonated in the lobby. He opened it slowly, revealing legal documents with official seals, signatures, and the hotel logo in the header. "Allow me to introduce myself properly," said Axl in a calm but audible voice for all nearby staff. "My name is Axl Rose, and as of this morning, at 6:47 a.m. to be exact, I am the new owner of the Grand Regency Hotel." The silence that followed was absolute. Employees who were arranging flowers froze. A bellhop pushing a luggage cart stopped dead. Amanda visibly paled. Her perfect makeup couldn't hide the loss of color in her face. This can't be real," Amanda whispered. "It's completely real," Axl responded, sliding the documents toward her. "You can verify them if you want. Meanwhile, I have some things to say." He turned to address the rest of the staff who had now gathered in the lobby, drawn by the commotion. He saw faces of all kinds: confusion, fear, curiosity, and in some cases, what appeared to be hope. "Last night, I came here looking for a room. I didn't arrive in a limousine. I didn't have a reservation. I didn't use my name. I was just a tired traveler who needed a place to sleep. And I was rejected. Not because there were no available rooms, but because someone decided that my appearance didn't fit the image of this hotel." Amanda tried to speak, but Axl raised a hand. "No, let me finish. I stayed outside and watched. I saw 3 more people enter after me. 2 were accepted immediately. 1 was rejected. Want to know what the rejected ones had in common? Neither of them seemed appropriate, according to someone's standards here." He pointed to an older man among the staff, who wore a concierge uniform. "What's your name?" "Robert, sir," the man responded in a trembling voice. "Robert, how long have you worked here?" 17 years, sir." 17 years. That's a long time. Have you seen this kind of thing before?" Robert looked at Amanda, then back at Axl. There was a moment of indecision before he nodded slowly. "Yes, sir, many times," Axl nodded. "Thank you for your honesty. Now, for everyone present, this hotel is going to change. Starting right now. First rule, all guests are welcome, regardless of how they dress, how they speak, or where they come from. If they have the money to pay for a room and don't represent a danger, they have a room, period." He walked slowly through the lobby, observing every detail. Second rule, any employee who discriminates against a guest for any reason other than actual inappropriate behavior will be fired immediately. There will be no warnings. There will be no second chances. He stopped in front of Amanda, who was now visibly trembling. "Which brings me to this. Amanda, you're fired. Effective immediately. You have 30 minutes to collect your things and leave the building." "You can't do this!" Amanda exclaimed, her voice breaking. "I have rights. I have seniority. And I have signed documents saying I'm the owner of this building," Axl responded without raising his voice. "Marcus here will escort you to your locker. Your final check will be mailed to you." Marcus, who had remained silent near the entrance, approached. Amanda looked at him with hatred, then at Axl. but eventually picked up her bag and walked away with furious steps toward the back of the hotel. Axl turned again to the staff. I know this is shocking. I know some of you are scared, but I want to be clear. I'm not here to punish everyone. I'm here to create something better. If you're willing to grow, to learn, to treat every person who walks through those doors with genuine respect, then you have a future here. A better future than you had yesterday. He pointed to Robert. Robert, with 17 years of experience, you are now the interim reception manager until we hire someone permanent. You're going to receive a 30% raise and complete training in hotel management. Robert was left speechless. Mr. Rose, I don't know what to say. Say yes. Yes. Absolutely yes. Over the following days, Axl implemented radical changes. He hired a firm specializing in diversity and inclusion to train all staff. The workshops weren't just boring compliance sessions, but real conversations about prejudice, empathy, and the true meaning of hospitality. He completely renovated the hotel's policies. He established a clear code of conduct. Guests would be judged solely by their behavior, not by their appearance. He installed an anonymous feedback system where both employees and guests could report incidents of discrimination. But he also made physical changes. The lobby, which had always been impeccable but cold, was redesigned with warmer elements. Living plants, softer lighting, comfortable lounge areas. He hired local artists to exhibit their works on the walls, paying them for the privilege. The message was clear. This was a space for everyone, not just for an elite. The reactions were mixed at first. Some regular guests complained about the changes, saying the hotel had lost its exclusivity. Axl responded by personally canceling their memberships and refunding their deposits. If exclusivity means discrimination, then I don't want you here, he told them. But other guests, many more, embraced the new direction. Online reviews began to change. Finally, a luxury hotel where I can be myself. One guest wrote, "The service is impeccable, but what really impressed me was that they treated me with genuine respect, not with that fake courtesy I've experienced in other places." 1 month after the acquisition, Axl was in his temporary office at the hotel, reviewing financial reports with Marcus. Despite losing some clients, bookings had increased significantly. The hotel was attracting a new type of clientele. Artists, entrepreneurs, creative professionals, people who valued authenticity over pretense. There was a knock on the door. Robert poked his head in. "Mr. Rose, there's someone here who wants to see you, says it's important." "Who is it?" "Amanda, the receptionist who, well, you know." Axl exchanged a glance with Marcus, then nodded. "Let her in." Amanda entered a few moments later. She looked different, without the impeccable uniform, without the heavy makeup, dressed in jeans and a simple blouse. Her eyes were red, as if she had been crying recently. "Mr. Rose, thank you for seeing me," she began in a trembling voice. "I know I have no right to be here after what I did." Axl leaned back in his chair, studying her. "Why are you here, Amanda?" She took a deep breath. "I came to apologize. Not just to you, but I needed to say it out loud. What I did was wrong. There are no excuses. It was discriminatory, it was cruel, and I've been thinking a lot about why I did it. And I grew up in an environment where I was taught that appearance is everything, that the right people look a certain way. I worked in luxury hotels for 10 years, and that mentality was constantly reinforced. But losing this job, it was like waking up. I tried to get another position in the industry, but your story spread. No one wants to hire me now. And you come here expecting what? Sympathy? No, Amanda said firmly. I came because I needed you to know that I understood the lesson. I've been doing volunteer work at a homeless shelter, and I've been taking classes on prejudice and discrimination. I don't expect you to believe me, but I wanted you to know that your actions changed something in me. Axl remained silent for a long moment. Marcus watched him, waiting for his reaction. Second chances are complicated, Axl finally said. Not everyone deserves them, but I also don't believe in destroying lives forever for a mistake, even a big one. Amanda looked at him with contained hope. I'm not going to offer you your job back. That would be hypocritical after everything I said. But I'm going to do something else. I'm going to write a letter of reference. It won't say you were a perfect employee, because you weren't, but it will say that you showed genuine remorse and capacity for change. What you do with that is up to you. Tears began to roll down Amanda's cheeks. I have no words. Thank you, thank you. Don't thank me yet. Prove you deserved it. Take those classes, continue with the volunteering, and be better. Not for me, but because it's the right thing to do. Amanda nodded repeatedly, wiped her tears, and left with a trembling goodbye. Marcus whistled softly when the door closed. You're softer than you appear. I'm not soft, Axl corrected. But I also don't believe in unnecessary cruelty. She made a mistake. I hope she learns from it. The following months saw the complete transformation of the Grand Regency. Axl implemented a scholarship program for young people from disadvantaged communities interested in hospitality. The hotel began offering reduced rates for artists who needed a place to stay during tours or projects in Los Angeles. He organized monthly community events where local residents could use the hotel facilities for free. Cooking classes in the restaurant, acoustic concerts in the garden, professional development workshops. The story of what had happened spread widely. The media covered it extensively. Rocker buys hotel that rejected him for discrimination. Some called it revenge, others poetic justice. Axl simply called it doing the right thing. 1 year later, the Grand Regency had been completely revitalized. Not just financially, although profits had increased by 40%, but culturally, it had become a model for how a business could be both profitable and ethical. One afternoon, as Axl walked through the renovated lobby, he observed the diversity of guests: a Latino family with small children, a group of Asian students on a graduation trip, an elderly African-American couple celebrating their anniversary, a young person with piercings and green hair who was clearly a musician. All were welcomed with the same warmth. Robert approached, now fully established in his role as reception manager. Mr. Rose, another interview request arrived. Rolling Stone this time. They want to do a full article about the hotel's transformation. Axl sighed. Tell them no. I've already said everything I needed to say. Are you sure? It would be great publicity. I don't need publicity to do the right thing, Robert. This hotel speaks for itself. Robert smiled. Understood. By the way, the family in the lobby, the one with the small children, wanted to thank you personally. They said they had been rejected at 3 hotels before arriving here. Axl felt something warm in his chest. Tell them there's nothing to thank. This is their hotel as much as it is mine. That night, as the sun set over Beverly Hills, Axl stood on the hotel terrace with a cup of coffee, watching the city that sparkled with millions of lights. He had built many things in his life: legendary albums, a career that defied all odds, a considerable fortune. But this hotel meant something different. It wasn't about money or fame. It was about creating a space where anyone could feel valued, no matter how they looked or where they came from. It was about proving that true hospitality had nothing to do with exclusivity and everything to do with humanity. Marcus joined him on the terrace. Do you ever regret buying it? It was a lot of money for a point. Axl shook his head. It wasn't just a point, it was a principle. And no, I've never regretted it. What's next then? More hotels? Axl smiled. Maybe. Or maybe just making sure this one continues to be what it should be. A place where every person is treated with dignity. He raised his cup in a silent toast to the city, to all the people who had been unfairly judged by their appearance, to all those who deserve better. The Grand Regency was no longer just a hotel. It was a statement, a reminder that true luxury isn't in the marble or crystal chandeliers, but in how we treat others. And under Axl Rose's direction, that message resonated in every corner of the building, in every interaction, in every guest who crossed those doors and discovered that, finally, they had found a place where they could be themselves without apologies. If this story touched you in any way, leave a comment sharing your experience. Sometimes the best conversations are born from shared stories.